Mr. Miller, may I call the meeting to order?
Yes, please.
Welcome to the October 16th Facility and Finance Meeting. I'd like to take roll call. Mr. Miller?
Here.
Dr. Grande, Mr. Henry they're out of town. I'd like to thank the other board members for attending. I'd like to move forward with approval of the September 18th facility meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve?
We don't have a quorum to
No,
approve.
we don't. Unfortunately. Move. Thank you. As we always start our meeting with our mission and vision statement. Going. Thank you. Tonight's agenda, we're having Kevin Gottschall and Allison Klingler from GKO providing a facility assessment report overview. And then I'll be providing some information on the CN3 retro commissioning repair update, and then a little bit of information on the NPE group. Kevin,
I'm actually going to turn it over to Allison.
all right, Allison, thank you very much.
Do I stand? Do I need to be
You can just sit and get
right here?
Yeah.
I can sit. Cool. Makes it easier to read my notes. A little less obvious. All right. So I'm Allison Klingler, GKO architect. Kevin Gottschall. I think you've already been introduced, but I'm going to reintroduce him anyway. So we did put together a feasibility study for all 5 schools here. To be clear, we personally surveyed the 3 elementary schools and the middle school and worked with Crabtree and Robb Associates, and they surveyed the high school. So we will, in this presentation, summarize all 5, but just to give a heads up on that. Also, Nick Surley Associates did the civil survey for all schools. And just before we get started, I want to note that it'll be a brief summary of items, of recommendation items at each school, as well as cost summaries. And I'll get into this more later, but I also want to say up front, the cost summaries are for all recommendations. They do not differentiate between what we call the needs and the wants. So I would just like everyone to kind of keep that in mind. So we can start Nether Providence. We can start. So overall, Nether Providence, the last renovation was done around 2013, meets all current code standards, and we generally found it to be in very good condition. I know there were some concerns with stormwater management. Surly Associates had a concern with the bioretention pond that I believe needs some work. And we noticed some potential roof drainage issues that we think should be looked into. The bigger concerns were kitchen equipment and mechanical equipment. And you'll see this kind of noted throughout the report for all the schools. As a general note, kitchen equipment tends to last 10 to 15 years, and mechanical equipment tends to last 20 to 25, depending on your specific equipment. So us and our associates who also surveyed these schools noted that a lot of these equipment's coming up on the end of its lifespan, so replacement and repair is recommended. For the most part, the interior finishes were starting to get worn, but mostly in good shape still. Okay, so moving on to Swarthmore Rutledge. In general, definitely not in good condition. There's a lot of stone and lintel repair needed on the outside. Interior finishes and layout is not in the best condition, and I don't know that the interior layout could ever be brought up to current code standards just due to the various times of renovation done throughout that school's history. So again, looking at electrical equipment, plumbing equipment, mechanical equipment upgrades. Again, interior finishes that are very worn, some damaged. That's.
I could probably cut into, I want to make mention that we had previously published a full facilities assessment, and where you're seeing the totals here on the list, they are broken down in this document, including, we try to sort of give you a synthesis of what's here, but they're broken down line item at a time in the document, so you can follow along and see what is actually in that 5-year, 10-year plan. And I guess not so much Swarthmore Rutledge, but Nether Providence and Wallingford, I still look at those as recently updated, recently expanded. But what you're seeing here is there's a 10-year projection. So 10 years onto a building that's 10 years old, we're seeing a lot of the systems starting to come due at that point. So that's why you're seeing some big numbers in the 10-year projection. It's looking at those systems that were put in 11 years ago and now saying, well, when they hit 20, 25 years old, for both those schools, they are on the list of things that need to be considered. And then I would also point out that more so at Nether Providence, but also at Wallingford, not everything was addressed in that 2013 renovation. So I know you weren't the board at the time, but the board at that time took that project and put a price tag on it and say, look, we want to keep it within this range. So within that existing building, it certainly did get a full renovation, but there were a few things that were deemed to be acceptable in 2011 when we were planning that building. That now obviously are, old enough, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, that are really starting to come due. So I don't think that's a bad thing because I think you got the life out of it. We didn't go through in 2012 and replace everything, but now those things are. So I think if you were going to sort of categorize those two schools, those are sort of, the cycle of things. As they.
Mhm. Right, so moving on to Wallingford Elementary. Again, for the most part, the building is in good condition. I know Nick's really had a lot of concerns with the site. Just due to the nature of the site, it's hilly and it's compact, and there's been some stormwater issues. I believe it's eroded under some sidewalk. I believe it's caused some issues in the playgrounds and the fields. So that's definitely something that should be looked into. And then again, just as time goes on, some general updates, interior and exterior finishes, mechanical equipment, kitchen equipment. Classroom cabinets are starting to get a little more. Again, nothing that immediately needs to be replaced, just something to consider. At this school, Strathaven Middle School, again, also, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, that is Strathaven. My apologies. Also in good condition. Again, kitchen equipment, mechanical equipment, things that are reaching the end of their lifespan. This budget summary does also include the full district-wide athletic field recommendations, just because, the stadium and the field are located on this site. This was kind of just the easy place to put them, but that number does apply across, and that those recommendations in the full report do apply across the district. And then just some interior finishes that, so again, are usable shape, but are starting to get worn, window finishes, ceiling tiles, things of that nature. All right, and then just summarizing Crabtree Robb Associates report for the high school. I know there was a concern on the roofing because otherwise the building is, generally in good condition, meets current code standards. But I know the roof is slated for replacement soon, I believe. Kitchen equipment, mechanical equipment. They noted that although generally the building was in good shape, there were a few classrooms, like really select classrooms that they caught in their report, that could use some updates. There are certain areas of doors that could stand to be replaced or repaired, and certain areas of lockers. One thing we did want to mention at the high school was that this current report does not include the full locker room or pool costs, as it's assumed that's going to be taken care of. And I believe there's an upcoming renovation under consideration.
Possibly, but we would like in a new new revision to have those dollars put in, so at least they're captured in this report.
All right, and we will coordinate that with Crabtree Robb.
That'd be wonderful.
Absolutely. All right, so then we just have, one more slide, our summary of the construction estimate. The first thing we do want to point out is that, the number is across 10 years. We understand it can be a scary number, but spread out across 10 years that it becomes more manageable. We also want to note that some of these estimates are a little overlapped. I know, especially Crouch and Roebuck, they had in their recommendations both, I believe like a classroom renovation recommendation, and then they would have a general ceiling replacement recommendation. So you don't need to replace a ceiling in a classroom twice. But their numbers do reflect both in case you were to select one project over the other. And as I noted in the beginning, right now the costs cover all recommendations, whether they're a want or a need. You know, a need is the mechanical equipment, is the kitchen equipment. A want is some of the bathroom floors are worn. You know, they're a little discolored. Are they certainly still usable for a student to go and use the toilet? Absolutely. But they're just showing their age.
Can we just clarify the dollars mentioned here on the board? Are they today's dollars? Or are they're today's dollars?
Today's.
They are today's dollars.
So
Yeah.
when you look at that and you start to say, 5 years, 10 years, look at that escalation of 5%, 6% compounded over all that time. So it's all based on today's dollars when you look at these costs. Mr. Miller?
Sure. Yeah, I got a couple of questions. Yeah. So it was sort of a throwaway line, but I want to get to it. You said about SRS, that its layout and how it is designed may never be able to come up to code.
And when I say that, I should clarify, I mean accessibility.
That's the other thing.
Yeah. Just the way that, there were, I believe at one point, 2 separate buildings. The gym was originally a separate building and the floor height was built at a different height than the main building. And I know you guys have done your best. You put in, ramps and lifts and stairs. And it for the most part is at least very, very close, but some rooms are very tight. Some bathrooms might not ever get the proper turning radiuses, especially as the code updates and tends to just make those things larger. So that's just what I wanted to know.
Yeah. I know it includes the needs and wants, but with SRS in fair to poor condition and the 1 and 3 year numbers and 5 year number even higher, I assume a lot of those are needs and not wants, if it's in a fair to poor.
Yes, SRS, you have some roofing issues, you have the kitchen itself, all the kitchen equipment is old, very old. The ventilation in there needs to be replaced in the next 3 to 5. There's some classrooms tiles that are popping, things like that, that they are trip hazards. We're right now fixing them here and there, not full replacements. It does need some work.
I would add to that, that's stone here in certain
Just get
locations.
repointed and
That's just something you're gonna constantly have to stay on top of.
Yeah, there's a few lintels that might actually need to be replaced. The ones that are in good shape can be repainted. The ones that are rusted should probably be replaced.
exterior doors.
Oh, sorry.
We're tackling now little by little and grabbing a couple doors each year and replacing them. The frames are completely rusted out down towards the bottom, and that's caused from salt, calcium over the years, harsh winters.
And just to clarify, because I think there was some questions, I always often forget that I use words other people don't know. I'm so sorry. A lintel is in this case, it is a metal shelf that sits behind the stone and it holds up the openings for windows. So that fails and we rebuild.
And lastly, I think this is another good step in the direction that the board needs to think about all of the deferred maintenance, all of the projects, all of the new construction. I do want us to eventually get to a point to know how much is everything going to cost to do each piece of the project, right? This is another good step in the right direction. Combining with the work with Crabtree is very good. I still feel like I lack some clarity of like total price tag, right? And so I'm looking forward to the process continuing. Board members?
I don't really have anything other to say other than I've had a kid at SRS since 2012 and I'm no architect, but to hear you validate what I've thought all along, which is that building is in not good shape, but I completely agree. So, thank you.
Thank you, and just same as what Bob said, I think we need the big picture so we can make good decisions. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at that slide and I'm reading from here. So what you're saying is in, fiscal year 25, which is coming up pretty quick. It would cost us approximately 4 million to do everything. I'm rounding up, 3.9. So it would have been clearer to me if instead of saying 3 years, it would say fiscal year 2 and 3. So we're dividing another 14, and is that that's a 6, so round up 14.7. So 7.35 million in each of those fiscal years. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that the fair way of viewing this?
You're saying if you combine both?
Yeah, well, if you broke them out, and separated them out evenly during each taxable year. So that's the kind of tax increase that, you know, the citizens would be, very. Okay, so I understand it out, so it gets pretty ugly.
Just to give this
Yeah,
a little bit more, so again, as a school district, there, with the Yakima index, there are limitations to just like that amount the school district could do. I think to Mr. Miller's point, why the board is looking for the whole picture is because the district more than likely would take the route of borrowing funds and where you can space that expenditure out over 15, 20
20
years.
years, yeah.
So instead of having that large burden of thinking, oh, we have to come up with $7 million
Oh,
a year.
good point, good point.
And if we can do it that way, it will be more feasible.
But if you, but the issue is, that's the money that needs to be found somewhere, whether it's borrowing or through tax, whatever, yeah.
Right, but I just wanted to make that point because I think
That's
people
fair.
would hear
Thank
7
you.
million in 1 year, just that could be overwhelming.
Yeah.
We would definitely, the feasible decision would be to borrow and to space it out over 20 years.
Good, thank you.
I'd like to sort of say that I think what you're looking for is maybe taking a list like this and starting to break it down into this is what we intend to do in year 1. This is what we intend to do in year 2. And the book is assuming that if we're saying the expected life expectancy of a Windows system, say, is 40 years, when the 40 years are up, it should be replaced. Well, 40 years, they don't all start leaking at the same time. It just means that you're going to see glass that's fogged up. You're going to see maybe some deterioration in the sills. You're going to see infiltration leaking. It doesn't mean that they absolutely have to be done in year 40. If 40 turns into 45. If air handling unit runs a few years a little longer, it means you're going to see increased maintenance costs. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be unusable. So I think what you're looking for is how do we come up with a plan? This is what we're going to take on. This is what we're not going to take on, but we're going to do it with our eyes open. We know what the condition of the system is. And, you know, that would be. So.
Can I just say something? The kitchen system seemed to come up consistently. Do we have a risk of fire there?
No,
No, it's not that.
The issue.
no, not at all.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Yeah, right.
It gets to be a parts issue with a lot of the older ovens. You just can't get parts anymore. And just this past year, we just got a new combi oven at the high school, which replaced 4 older ovens through our food service budget. So that worked out extremely well. Any other questions?
No, thanks.
Kevin Allison, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Give you a brief update on the CM3 retro commissioning repairs that have been going on over the summer and to date. Next. Next. Oh. From this chart here, when you look at it where the red and the green start to come together in the bottom right, we're down to 32 issues left. If you go to the next slide, at the start of the project, we noted that there were 427 priority one issues. And CM3 was estimating that they still needed to look at 70 water source heat pumps here in this building and put an estimate that there'd be approximately 2 issues for each of those water source heat pumps. Well, the number really came up to not 824 issues. It was 792 issues. Those additional issues were at a zero cost to the district. They bid on the job of doing the 2 buildings and they stuck to that price, which is very good. We're down to 32 issues. What we found as we went through that a lot of the units were not operating efficiently. And some of the coils were so clogged, it almost looked like a cat was on the coil. There was that much hair and dirt on the coil. Every single coil in this building and SRS was clean. What that gave me the ability to do now is start to look at ramp up times, ramp down times on how long it takes to warm up that room. Presently, everything was coming on at 6 in the morning. Well, our software lets you do what they call a trend analysis. It's a big thermometer and lets you graph exactly how long it takes to warm up that room or cool down that room. So now I've been able to go and start to look at, instead of 6, maybe it's 6:30, 6:45, I can start those units running, which saves 45 minutes of energy a day per classroom. So hopefully now we'll start to see energy savings even on top of what we projected based on the Giza project that CN3 had done. The original Giza project that CN3 started the year before I was here, or that summer before I was here, that has come to a conclusion. They're done. I just got the final paperwork today on my desk to sign off on. So now we're just moving forward with the completion of this project now on the retro commissioning priority one repairs. The next step for us to do is start to look at that next clump of units, whether it's at the high school or at West or at NPE, and start to address those issues and see where we move forward and put a number to that then I can put and sit down with Dewan into the budget for the next upcoming year of what we'd like to start to address and adapt. Any questions on the retro commissioning?
Yeah, just really quick on that. When you say put it in the budget, last year we did set money aside for deferred maintenance. Are we talking about staying within that budget line? Great.
The plan is as the district does update, address some of the deferred maintenance and some of the repairs, your preventative maintenance costs would actually, it actually should decrease because like you're not putting so much on it. So that amount that we did, that 1.2 million we added this year is kind of like your max. It should be your max. I'll say that because again, as the equipment is updated, things are running more efficiently. You're not spending that much more on fixing it.
Will there be a way to monitor the savings from the energy costs, apples to apples, not just like total dollars because energy costs different?
I mean, more than likely, we will be able to look at like our electric costs, month to month. Like I said, once everything is completed, you'll have a month where we didn't have any of them repaired and then the month that we did. So that's more probably months or years down the line, but yet you would eventually be able to do it.
I can, thank you.
Oh, good work, right? This is good.
I have 2. One is silly. What's WSHP stand for?
Water source heat pump.
Thank
So
you.
that's an air handling unit that works off our geothermal system.
Sorry. The other is you cited 427 priority 1. That says to me there must be priority 2s and 3s. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, there is.
Oh, okay. And so in a prior life, we classified priority 1s as showstoppers, but these are not showstoppers. But can you give us some examples of, I think you gave us examples of ones, but what are twos and threes? Are they nice to haves?
What the priority twos, are units that are coming up on end of life. Right now, it's not an immediate, has to get replaced or fixed, but it could be a year or two from now. You know, that motor's ready to get going
Okay,
and you're gonna be replacing a motor. Compressors don't last 15, 20 years. They need to get replaced.
And I did just want to add, I think the direction the district is trying to move in is to be more proactive. Again, a lot of these costs exist because we didn't address them when we could have, and it got to the point where now we don't have a choice. So if we're properly planning for something that even it's going to expire or end of shelf life in 10 years, if we're thinking about that in year 8, we'll be more.
so will these 32 be pretty well addressed by when?
Probably within the next 6 to 7 weeks.
Okay, so the next list will be priority twos that we are going to be looking at as becoming priority
Well,
one.
they could bump up to some could bump up to a priority one,
Yeah,
since it's the following year, but we'll be
okay,
sitting down with CM3 and Tom, who's my supervisor, looking at the data, looking at the units based upon the original CM3 report.
so you expect that there won't be 824 priority ones the next time we go through this?
I'm hoping there's not gonna be 800.
Well, that would, your priority twos and threes would tell you if there are threes, twos, what's coming down the pipe.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's moving in, sounds like it's moving in the right direction.
I think we are, because you can definitely see it in our energy usage. Just the Giza project that was done at the high school alone, I looked at one utility report, and I think we saved over 800 kilowatts in a month, which is a nice number.
Okay.
And then being able to tweak the trends a bit and squeeze that window of heat and air down even more, we'll get some more savings. Good, MP, we're good. Can move on to, that's just a phase of where we are, project completion rate. Could we move on to MPE? NPE is moving along very well. The skylight finally came in. Procom Roofing will be there this Saturday, installing the skylight as well as the last 2 pieces of fascia metal that go around the band of the building. They came up short when they were doing that. Once that's completed, they'll be in the following week to replace the metal fencing that was in the front that they had to remove from the crane. And then I will be scheduling Tremco to come out, who will do the warranty walkthrough and ensure that the work that Procom did is up to par. And then we get our warranty for that 30-year roof. And the agenda topics that we put in place for the year, we'll be moving through these. The high school renovation plan, retro commissioning, we'll update that probably in the next month or 2 again. The facility assessment, we'll be digging into that in the next month or 2. The Pennsylvania School Facility Improvement Grant was pushed off. They're saying possibly the end of this month, beginning in November, they'll start to make grants out to the different schools. Be working with Dewan on budgeting. I just received, as well as the other administrators, our first go ahead at phase 1 budgets. We'll be working on a deferred maintenance objectives. So we'll pick with the administration level and here the council on the committee, what you want to see in the next up and coming meetings. And I'll work with Dr. Grande of what will be there on board for the next meeting. And then we'll be looking at summer projects. One of the major ones we're going to try to look at and do is at King Field in front of the concession stand. There are some ADA issues there that I'd like to address, as well as do some work on that front patio, which there's some potential tripping issues and all in that area. I'd like to get that up and ready and do a project over the summer with that. So we need to get our arms around that pricing and see where it comes in at. And I'll make that presentation to the committee. And that's it for me. Are there any questions on any of the
I would just say to Leo's point, that list of agenda topics are all the things that we're gonna be tackling to see what it is that we're paying for next year.
You talk about the PA facility improvement grant update. I remember there was some discussion about applying for a grant. I don't know if it was this topic,
We did.
where we stood little chance of getting it. Is this the one?
That is the grant.
I mean, there's other ways to phrase that.
But
Well, fair assessment based on their criteria, wasn't it? I mean, you're all shaking your head,
yes,
yes.
we did apply and we applied it into two separate categories. One was for secured vestibules for 4 out of the 5 schools.
Right,
And then the other was for water source heat pumps for a full replacement of this building.
but we still stand with a chance.
Well,
Oh,
we're very hopeful. We'll see.
I'm realistic about these things, which what I heard reported, a lot of it is based on needs assessment. So although the vestibule safety is important, and there's not much of an argument to be made for.
Safety is one of their criteria.
Section in Nether Providence, but we could make it.
I will say a little bit of silver lining for us as a requirement of that grant, the district had to move 20% of the funding into capital, which was about 1.5 for us. So worst case scenario, if we don't get the grant, we do have that 1.5 that we move to capital that the district can use to address some of our other capital needs. So that's already been put aside. That's a little bit of silver lining for that. We had that little extra sitting there to start addressing everything.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Are we breaking the
Let's take
record?
3. Let's take 1.5.
And we'll take
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. Is it okay with you? I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Please do.
Good evening and welcome everyone to the October 16, 2024 Finance Committee meeting. At this time, I'd like to take roll call. Mr. Miller?
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Grande and Mr. Kevin are absent today, and I also would like to acknowledge other board members present. As always, included is the mission and vision and also the meeting protocol. Here's the agenda for today. We will not be approving the September 18th, 2024 minutes because we don't have a quorum, so those will be added along with the October meeting minutes added to the November agenda. We're gonna give department updates as well as a National School Lunch Program update. There were some things that, based off the timeline of that program that happened recently, so we wanted to provide that update. It also may have impacted some of our families. So we want to just give a little bit more detail on that. Also going forward, probably later in the year, we'll do an overall view of the National School Lunch Program, just so people can continue to have that education of what the program is, how it works, how it has to operate, and what the district obligations and responsibilities are. Like I said, Ms. Christie will present the contracts, and then later we'll present the September financials and the. So for department updates, first things first, the Act One index was set by the state. This is for informative purposes only. The index was set at 4%. That's not what the district is doing or making any decisions, but I did just wanted to provide that to the public. Phase one was emailed to our budget managers on Monday. It was supposed to go out Friday, but I thought that was a heavy email to get on Friday over the weekend, so I saved it for Monday. Just to remind the board, last year we implemented 2 new phases where phase one was to capture all of our contractual and mandated expenses. Again, that's to help us, some of our already existing costs naturally increase. So we want to make sure we're capturing that before we're looking at an index and determining how much flexibility we actually have. So just to give you an example of our phase one expenditures, of course, your personnel, contractual costs, any existing agreements. Also, the district has been moving to where we've been approving multi-year agreements, which again does have a lot of benefits to us. It helps us lock in our costs, but also helps save so those costs aren't increasing at the rate of doing annuals, as well as like debt service and electric and other expenses that we know we have to pay. So we've been was sent to all of our budget managers. They have until November 15th to submit that to the business office. And then I will be working with, or the business office will be working with HR to determine our reserve allocation for upcoming negotiations. This year, we know we have our support staff, Act 93, our Teamsters and other bargaining units. So again, because that is personnel costs and it's also contractually obligated, it's technically a part of our phase one. But again, because phase one is due in November and those agreements won't be settled by that time, we're trying to just determine the dollar amount to put that to a side to make sure we're ready for that. As it relates to our audit update, all journal entries and corrections have been made for all of our funds except Fund 10. Like I said, we're in a really good place. We did speak with Tom Josiah today. Like I said, our Fund 10 won't be fully reconciled by the time the auditors get here on October 28th. Of course, he's a consultant working with other districts, but we did talk to him about having that ready by the beginning of November. Again, our window for the audit is October 28th to November 11th. So again, we have enough for the auditors to begin to work with. And again, with time working and making those final adjustments and then providing to us, we'll make those adjustments while the auditors are here. Wanted to talk more detail about the Giza account, closing of Fund 39. Just to give a little bit more background to anyone who may not be aware of the district borrowed funds in 2022 for that Giza account. However, in error, those funds were added to our capital account and expenditures, well, checks were being dispersed from Fund 32. Those funds should have not been added to Fund 32. So as part of the auditing process last year, we reconciled and in e-finance, we were able to create Fund 39. We created it with the flexibility to produce an income statement, a balance sheet for audit purposes, and we did create a separate bank account and move the money out of Fund 32. However, it didn't have the flexibility to cut checks to disperse funds. So basically all of the Giza disbursements still took place in fiscal 23-24 from Fund 32. And so now what we're doing is we've reconciled both of those accounts and we're now going to move the money from the Giza account back to capital because those disbursements should have never happened from it. This is not a capital transfer that requires board approval because again, the funds should have never came from Fund 32. But again, from the beginning, the funds weren't deposited correctly. So it was more of, we have to work with what we have. And then, like I said, we wanted to wait till the audit came out and those numbers were reviewed, reconciled before we did any movements. And like I said, I also wanted to mention that to the public before I transfer the money, which I'll do tomorrow. But I didn't want people to say, well, this extra money came from capital and the user account went down. So tomorrow I will be transferring $973.19 from the Giza account. And like I said, reimbursing our capital account. That makes sense to everyone? And then I also wanted to mention, as of right now, in the Giza account is $1,025,572.91. That's what's in there based off the money that was moved and interest that was accumulated. We do have one visa payment remaining, which is just like the balance of the retainage, in the amount of $67,752. So basically, what's left in our Giza account after I do that transfer is only about 44,000. So we're a little short, which means the capital account would just have to bear the difference, which is about, like I said, $24,000. That really came about, there was a change order done with the Giza project in the amount of 82,000. So that's what caused us to kind of go over the amount that we originally borrowed, the amount that we were originally given. So like I said, I did just want to make that notice to the public in the November meeting, you'll see on the October financial, the Giza account's only going to have about $40,000 in it now, and the capital account would have about an extra $1 million, but that's what's going to happen. Since our September meeting, 10 audit items have been submitted to the auditors. To date, 29 out of 37 items have been submitted. 2 of those items that remain, of the 8 items that remain, we can't even submit until October 28th, because it's one of those things that say from July 1st to the day that they show up. 3 of the other items are kind of intertwined with each other. As far as our CFO report, our receivables as well as our deferred revenues. So once like our CFO is done, the other 2 will kind of get done. And then today, Ms. Christie is working on our fixed assets. So like I said, probably this week we'll submit 2 of those items, and then hopefully by next week, those other 3 items that we can send will be submitted to them. But like I said, we are in a really, really good place considering where we were last year. And like I said, the auditors are coming in on October 28th through November. For new business, we did apply for a new PCCD grant for safety and security for a total of $165,400. I do have to thank Ms. Dana McBride for all of her hard work and due diligence. In our submission, we included to purchase Navigate 360, which is our emergency and visitor management system for 2 years, 50 two-way radios, and a cost to fix some broken and outdated cameras for safety reasons. I'm not going to mention what cameras. But that's what we included in the grant right now. We're just waiting to hear back from the city. And then as it relates to old business, we did submit, I mentioned a lot of these reports in our last finance committee meeting, and we've already completed most of them. We did submit the fiscal 24 annual PSER statements 10 days after we first talked about it. I do have to give it a major congratulations and thank you to our HR department who does a lot of the PSER's maintenance as far as making sure our employees are in the system, if there are any changes or people are out, if people have a new contract, if they're coaching, making sure all of those records are up to date, as well as our payroll clerk who's been doing an amazing job. I think we all know the history of payroll here. But again, that testament to that is a lot of these reports are a testament to what's happening on a day-to-day basis. We also did submit all of the workers' compensation audit documents that was requested. We did that in about a week. We did submit the SHARS report the day after the last finance committee meeting. So again, I want to thank all of the district nurses. We completed the food service verification process eligibility. We actually did that, finalized that yesterday instead of the 8th. What that is a requirement from the state that every year you have to, between October 1st and November 15th, any actual application, because again, the state likes to have everyone directly certified. Any applications, you have to review them to make sure there's any errors, and then basically contact whoever's randomly selected to make sure they have to then submit proof of the income that they stated on that application. So again, we did that. We did send out the notice to that family. We are required to send a second notice, and then on November 15th, it'll finalize, and then we'll be able to submit that report to the state. It's not due until February 1st. But again, we're going to try to go ahead and knock it out. And then lastly, we did talk about our last meeting. When we talked about it in a few meetings, we had some kitchen equipment that we did purchase, and Mr. Maloney also just spoke to it. The old equipment, we're looking to either scrap it or sell it. So Mr. Maloney is actually doing all the due diligence to where that equipment is to try to see if we can get potential buyers. And then, like I said, next meeting, I know he just talked about a lot about replacing kitchen equipment. We'll actually talk about that in more detail at our November meeting. So like I said, this is the update I wanted to give about our National School Lunch Program. Like I said, what we like to do in the business office, continue to provide as much information as possible so people can have a thorough understanding of these processes. And like I said, there were some changes at the state level, which I'll show in the next slide, that did impact some of our families. So I wanted to just do more of an overview. So every year, the district participates in the federal national school lunch program. So everything we do as far as food service, what we provide, pricing, all of that is already pre-approved by the state. Before you guys even approve it, each year it's more of a formality when the district does it because the state already approved it. But every year lunch status runs from our fiscal year, which is July 1 to June 30th. So every year your child's lunch status is determined. I know that was speaking to some of our families. I've said, well, my child always gets free lunch, but I told them something actually happened. It doesn't just roll over. There was something that happened, whether it's unbeknownst to them or not. There's only 2 ways to be approved for free or reduced lunch. You either submit an application, and every year the state determines the income guidelines. You do not, or you are directly certified. Direct certification is when the state cross matches our enrollment with DHS records. So we'll submit our student enrollment to the state, and they'll say these particular families already receive SNAP, Medicaid, or whatever other benefits that they offer, and they automatically qualify for free or reduced lunch. The state implemented that system to also basically verify records to make sure everybody that's receiving free or reduced lunch is actually qualified. So those are the only 2 ways you can qualify for free or reduced lunch. The state also gives a 30-day grace period. So effective July 1st, every student is moved to what is called the 30-day grace period determination. What that means is for the first 30 school days, so not just the first 30 calendar days, but the first 30 school days, every children will have the same status that they had last year. So for us, the first day of school was August 26th. Our 30-day grace period ended on October 9th. So if your child was free and reduced lunch from fiscal 23, 24, they had that same status coming into this year. If we received a paper application or you were directly certified for this year, then your status would have changed and your child is good until June 30th of 2025. If we did not receive anything, by law, we had to change those student status to paid. We sent out the letters on September 11th. We had 135 families. We've been receiving a lot of paper applications. People have been submitting them. However, if we did not receive anything, by law, we had to change that status to paid. And then lastly, and that was effective 10/10. So I also wanted to put in 2 links here how people can apply. You can either fill out a paper application, which is on the district website. This link is also applicable, and it's an application for each school, and you send that over to the business office to Ms. Christie's attention, or you can fill out an online application on conference website. And the state only requires the school district to do direct certifications 3 times a year. However, we've been doing them every 2 weeks. This is a benefit that is for our students, for our families. It doesn't hurt us to do it as multiple times. We've already completed 9 different direct certifications, and we're trying to make sure we're capturing as soon as possible these kids who are directly certified to make sure they're getting their benefits. So we've already performed 9 direct certifications this year. As of this point, we only were required to perform 2. This is an email that was sent, I believe, October 7th, 8th, to school districts. If you look at the first sentence, it says the number of sponsors have reached out to the Pennsylvania Department of Education regarding a decreased number in direct certification. Wallingford was one of those sponsors school districts. Because again, we received a couple of calls from families saying what they didn't understand why they received that notice. We explained to them up until the date of that notice, the district did not receive notice from the state that you were directly certified, nor did we receive an application. And again, by law, we're required to send those 30-day notices. I was one of the people that talked directly to one of their reps, and she did tell me she couldn't give me too much detail because this notice was going to be coming out soon. This was sent out, and they did say that they did an extensive search with DHS, and there was no systematic issues. What happened was, as related to COVID, right after COVID, the state extended medical access beyond income. So one of the main route of someone being approved for free or reduced lunch is based on income. After COVID, they extended that. So anyone with medical access was receiving free and reduced lunch. In April of 23, they ended that continuous eligibility. And they stated that all households on Medicaid were required to follow up with their caseworkers. If they no longer were eligible, that benefit was terminated. So for a lot of our families, now I wouldn't say a lot, but the few that we have spoken to who did receive free and reduced lunch because the state extended Medicaid, well, they ended that. So that's why they weren't directly certified. The only thing they can do now is fill out an income application. And again, we don't determine those income guidelines, the state does. So you either qualify or you don't. And again, they can follow up with their caseworker. We have actually been forwarding this email to some of those families that have reached out to us. Again, there's no separate district process. There is a federal program process. That benefit was extended not by the district, but because the state extended that benefit and now they took it away. So like I said, we did receive a couple phone calls and a couple concerns. So I did want to just lay that out. And like I said, give as much detail as possible. And then next year, when we're going into next school year, we'll probably do another overall national school lunch update, just so people are aware of the process. But again, so just in case if the board receives any notifications or, people are talking about it, this is what actually, it is what happened. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Before we move on to hang on a second, I'll make sure board members go first. Okay. Not a question, but it's something that I talked about before. This is to be reimbursed federally, right? So the district itself could choose to extend free lunch as a budgetary matter. Like we could budget money for extended income if we wanted to do that.
Yeah, and that would require us to change our policy because our policy reference specifically, we follow state and federal law as it pertains to the National School Lunch Program. And that was another part of the conversation we had with families. It wasn't that I didn't want to do anything, but our policies specifically
absolutely.
reference the federal program. So until the district updates the policy, there isn't anything that we really can do for anyone short of them just filling out the application. And getting approved.
Yes, we could do that.
Yeah.
That'll be my question as well, is what can we do for that? So, and my other question, I think you said it, but I'm maybe, the application, like the families, the 135 families that you notified, did they get like a hard copy or they did?
We did include a copy of the application in with every letter to the families. And like I said, we have been receiving a lot of them come back. They have been filling.
Question of phase one.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure that new negotiation for a new superintendent, that you're including that in your.
Right.
in your new negotiation.
What we already did, in working with HR, we did pull comparable, salaries to
Okay,
all of the county, our Delaware County School District, as well as comparable districts in Montgomery County and Chester County. So we did already pull that, so we can start doing some comparison to my district.
Very myself.
It was interesting to pull.
Thank you.
I just want to be clear on what you were asking. You were asking whether or not the school district can extend the free lunch program
Right. It
to
would be,
people that missed filling in the application.
right. We chose to, we could try to change our policy and extend
So
it.
that would have to go to the policy committee,
Yes.
and the policy would have to be rewritten.
And it also would require a bigger discussion because again, our students that are in our system classified as free or reduced, we are reimbursed by the state for those students. So that's why it would require, if the district decided to do something different, it would have to be classified a certain way because those will be students we are not eligible to be reimbursed schools. So it's a bigger. that's why
So
it has to
if
go
the
before-
district extends it, we're not reimbursed.
We are not reimbursed.
We pay, it would be,
Okay.
we'd have to budget that line item in the budget for X amount of dollars
Okay.
for that purpose. Yeah.
And just to give a little bit more, I would like to, like I said, extend a thank you to Dr. McCullough. She does work with a program, the Giant Food Company. Every year, the district does get a check. Last year, we got about 7,600, which we use those funds to apply to students or families that are in need to zero out their lunch account. We still do have students that or families that may have a negative account. Again, but we're trying to find ways to help those families as much as possible.
That was a question I had, because I heard that students there's no, there's no monitoring of students going into the negative at the end of the school year, like there's nothing that stops it saying you owe $20, you can't spend anymore.
So, but for one, we're not allowed to deny any child, a lunch or breakfast. Secondly, we are not, again, this is National School Lunch Law, we're not allowed to say anything to the student about a negative account. We are allowed to send notice to the parents, 2 notices to the parents, again, that's according to us, and that's something we are, like I said, we're working with, we recently had a conversation with Dr. McCullough about how do we want to address that, because again, this is a bigger issue, like I said, costs are going up and families are in more of a need, and again, if they don't qualify, that does limit to what we can do. So that's why it needs to be a bigger discussion about possibly a policy change on how we can help and support families to the best of our ability.
But the negative is only for the cost of lunch or breakfast. It doesn't include snacks.
I will have to double check on
Okay.
that. More
I don't think we have that granular of it.
I didn't want to confirm that, but to the point, it's the kids punch in their PIN number and whatever is charged to that PIN number is recorded in their account.
And we also
So
have.
where does that money go? Where does that, when they pay it back, where does that money go?
All lunch goes to our food service account, our Fund 51 account.
So I think it was from the parent at West that she had mentioned that the school district was allowing kids to go into the negative, so because we were profiting off of the negative balances or something
Well,
like
it's counter negative, that is actually revenue owed to us, so it's not a profit off of that. If we do have accounts that are, it's a loss for us, because that money that we should have received, we didn't.
that. Okay.
On the budget planning, to somebody's point about upcoming negotiations. And the superintendent was cited. I've lost track. Where are we on the teachers? That's still outstanding, or did we resolve that?
We have a tentative agreement with teachers.
Okay.
And they are scheduled to ratify that next week. As soon as they do, the board will schedule that for a board meeting.
But is that what you had in mind when you wrote this sentence?
So no, that contract will actually be effective July 1. So these are specific negotiations that are upcoming, that contracts are expiring at the end of June 30th of 25.
Oh,
So we're
okay.
going to actively negotiate those.
And so one was the superintendent. What's the other one? Are there others?
Our support staff, our Teamsters, our support staff,
Uh-huh.
Teamsters, and our administrators.
And teachers cover who?
I think our bus drivers.
Okay. And what was the final one of the teachers you said, support staff?
Support staff and our administrators, Act 93.
Oh, administrative. And I want one other thing, I hate to take up time. Under new business, PCCD, who are they?
The Pennsylvania Commonwealth Commission.
Commission for Crime Building. It's the safety grants, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so you said you applied for that grant and it says safety and security. Is that the same as or different from the one we were talking about earlier?
This is different.
It's different.
Yes.
Are there duplicate things in there? It sounded the same.
No,
No? Okay.
you can't use that, actually.
Okay. I trust you, but it sounded the same. Safety.
Lots of different things.
I think that's all I had on that. Who's Tom? Did you say Tom?
Tom Desai, he's our audit prep consultant.
Oh, second.
Yes.
Okay.
And before we move on too, I just want to clarify, you had mentioned that we're ahead in the audit process. I know in the past, we've had community members very concerned about how deep into the year we go.
Mhm.
How far ahead are we?
Like I said, as far as we received our outstanding audit items in August, last year we received it in December. Which means that's the starting point to actually get them what they need to do. Like I said, we have 8 total outstanding items. They're coming in 2 weeks. And it is our goal that we would have all that information to them. So the 2 weeks they're here, they're actually going over our document and would possibly be able to get us a rough draft in November. So that is the goal.
Thanks.
All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Christie, who's going to be presenting the contract that'll be submitted for the upcoming board meeting.
Before I get started on that, I did want to mention for the families in need, we do have a resource of our school district social worker, Janae Young. So she likes to be looped in on some special needs cases, and she works with the families to get them resources outside the district.
She does a fabulous job.
He really does. So yeah, here are the contracts that are being presented. We have 8 of them. We have some renewals, some new contracts, some music license for our spring plays. We have one, I don't know if you guys want me to go and read through all of them. But like I said, we have 3 renewals, 4 new, and the news are different categories. School play licenses for the music. Our Pennsylvania Higher Education, Education Assistance Agency will provide if we have student teachers on board, we'll provide them with grant funds. Since they'll be student teaching in our district, we won't pay them, but for participating in the program, they will provide funds that will be passed through the district, then be paid to the student teacher. Number 4, we did want to highlight number 4, Commonwealth of PA, Department of Environmental Protection. We are required, our transportation department is required to register our underground storage tanks each year. And for 3 years, we did not do that in time. So the state is implementing a penalty of $2,100 for us to pay. So that's an agreement that we have to abide by. I did want to highlight that. But moving forward, we will be paying that fee on time.
And the reason that it had to be presented to the board as an agreement is because we're consenting to the civil penalty.
That's it.
That's what I'll ask a question about that. Saying that we are going to pay it on time going forward, was there something systemic that we fixed, or we just now have it on the calendar?
We had it on the calendar, more, like I said, one of the things I did ask of Patty, especially since she is, will be retiring soon, is to create a calendar from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year and highlight those requirements that are due every portion of the year, or highlight the big, start of school, what things need to be in place for the start of school or for the winter break. So when we have, let's say, weather changes and things like that. But she has already been working on that. And like I said, this was one of the things that we made sure to highlight on the calendar to make sure we're paying that fee on time.
That's it for me. Questions from the contracts?
No, I just find this first one interesting that it's for MP and it's no cost to the district, so good for them, but I wish the other 2 elementary schools might want to take
Maybe
it.
Mr. Hack can make it.
Right.
That's not the book fair set up.
Yeah, the book fair, like
Yeah.
that's, yeah, that should, yeah.
Does that mean teachers don't set it up?
No, parents set it up. Parents, yeah. Well, at least that's for us, although apparently. Apparently, he's on something here.
Mary Jo?
How many teachers are taking advantage of the higher education assistance?
That is a question we can ask HR.
We don't know.
They do actually.
Just.
We had one student last year that did apply, the fund. They're required to do all the paperwork, and we're just a pass-through entity. But we did have one student teacher last year that applied and received $25,000.
Yeah, wow, that's worth it fun.
Yeah.
That's way more than.
First come, first served. They budgeted a certain amount.
Oh, is that right?
All right.
Nanette, any questions on the contracts?
No.
Rachel?
I do have a quick question. When I'm sitting in at the DCIU meetings and they go through contracts, they have something that they say, I wish I brought it with me, but I didn't. I ran it without my laptop and they this thing, they say like after each one, it's like, you know, we're moving this forward with the, you know, any changes might be made due to, you know, the lawyers looking at it, something like that. It's like this official sentence that they say at, you know, the end of each time, just I think to provide some cover that some things could change as they go through a process. So it made me wonder, has this stuff already been vetted?
So all the contracts that are presented at the finance committee meeting have already been vetted by legal and countersigned by the company. So
Okay.
when we're signing them at the board meeting, those are, the legal review was part of the process last year. The countersign is something we added this year. Again, so when we're signing them at the board meeting, they're fully executed at that point, which means it's in full.
Yeah, and we have done that. In fact, we just did that with the superintendent search contract. Because it wasn't fully vetted by the solicitor, but we wanted to say pending solicitor.
I do remember somebody saying
So
something
we have
like that. And it was like, you know, I haven't, it sounded familiar and I had DCIU, but it didn't, like, I haven't heard that on a regular basis.
And that particular contract, we didn't present at the finance committee meeting,
Right.
because it's still being reviewed. So again, that's to protect our bases, but the contract that I presented to you guys at these meetings have already been met.
Okay, thanks for answering that.
Leo, anything on the contracts?
No,
All right, and then I'm gonna move on to our financials. I'll bring up the September treasurer's report. Just to go through our revenue specifically, our fund 32 and 39 account revenues were only earned interest. Based off the money that's sitting in the account. Our Fund 51 revenues consisted of online lunch account payments, earned interest, and cafeteria sale deposits. Now that we're in the month of September, going forward, you're going to see mostly cafeteria sale deposits. Our Fund 71 revenue consisted of earned interest and a deposit into the Diane McCormick Fund. Fund 81 revenues consisted of earned interest, deposits into our middle school yearbook, our high school yearbook, and our high school debates team. And our Fund 10 revenues consisted, of course, of local, state, and federal revenue sources. Most of the funds were for real estate. We're currently in the flat period, which ends at the end of October. So that's where you're no longer getting a 2% discount, but after October 31st, the late penalty kicks in. We also received some other larger revenues. You can actually stay right there. Our larger revenues, we did receive our retirement subsidy. Scroll up a little bit. Right there, the 2.4 million under state revenue, as well as our special education, which was about 370,000. We also received our IDEA reimbursement from last year, which was $648,000, as well as we earned interest for the month of September in the amount of 277,000. And then we also received a receipt from other school districts, which is an amount of about 187,000. If you see there, you can scroll up a little bit, I'm sorry. Right there under our local revenue sources, just so you guys have a better understanding of that. Our school district is actually a school district where other school districts send their students here through the IU. So at the end of every year, the IU will send us a report and say, hey, here's the students from other school districts that went to or receive services from your school district. And then the business office creates invoices to those school districts and say, based on your student being educated here, they have to pay us the tuition rate. So again, it's for last year. We don't receive that report probably until like August. So the revenues that are coming in are really for last year services. But again, that's what those revenues are. So you have a better understanding. And you can close that. Thank you. And then on the next slide. And like I said, I have attachments here. We don't have to open them again. As you guys recall, all of our attachments are made available Friday before our meeting. So it's already been posted for 5 days for anyone to view for the public. But here are our bills list. Fund 10 combined, we spent about 16.5. Specifically, like I said, remember our Fund 10's bill list doesn't capture journal entries, which are how we actually record most of our payroll expenditures. So we itemize and separate those Those are identified on our, treasurer's report, so I had that attachment. And then for our capital food service and student activity, the bills list items are attached. Are there any questions?
Not for me, for any board members?
For me.
So,
Wait,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
do we send any student to any other school districts for IU type services?
I can verify and double check that with student service.
I know we have something very specialized.
Should be other pots, but it's kind of.
I'm trying to shuffle the papers and the slides here, but, you said we had a beginning balance of 49 million. And then you totaled up all our revenue. And I'm trying to find, am I correct? The ending balance was was what?
So on the treasurer's report, if you go to page 2,
There aren't any pagination, so just, I'm trying to shuffle the,
our total cash available before we subtracted the expenditure was 65.3 million. And then once you take away our expenditures, our ending cash was the $48.8 million figure.
I see the 48, okay. Okay. Is that where we expect it to be?
Yes, like I said, because our district is mostly funded by, taxes, we receive most of our revenue in August. I think last month we funded like $50 million, in the month of August. So we received most of our revenue. And then, like I said, up to this point, the expenditures that are due, we had some larger expenditures in September. Like I said, again, that's on the treasurer's report as well as the bills list. We paid our balance of our medical. So the district we have the payment option where we pay 2 months in advance, and then we pay the last 10 months in September. So that was like over $5 million. And then we also had to pay our PSERS payment, which was about 4.7 million. That's why this month expenditures are so high.
Okay, so they're non-recurring.
Yes, no, those are not. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, our next meeting is scheduled for November 20th. Just to give a heads up, 2 things specifically that we are going to discuss in that meeting, like I said, are the potential food service equipment, based off of our access fund and our food service account. And then I am going to do a more of a detailed presentation on homestead. Again, as of reaction of our tax bills being incorrect, and most of our residents were very happy because their tax bill actually went down $400. However, for those residents who didn't have homestead and called me and said, most of my bills the same, I'm like, sorry. So of course, everyone's like, well, I want a homestead application. So we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive education as relates to that, because the window opens on December 15th to where those applications are going out, and then they need to be sent to the county in March. So we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail next week.